So I recently reviewed the TicWatch Pro 3 GPS, a really rather bloody good Wear OS smartwatch, boasting better than average battery life thanks to that nifty dual display design. And now manufacturer Mobvoi has released an LTE version of that very same smartwatch, rather unsurprisingly called the TicWatch Pro 3 LTE, offering full cellular support so you can reply to messages and the like without having to carry your smartphone around at the same time. Now here in Blighty, that LTE model will cost you £330. That's £40 more expensive than the bog standard TicWatch Pro 3. And here in the UK, you'll also find that the cellular support is a Vodafone exclusive, so you're going to have to grab yourself an eSIM contract through Voda if you want that full functionality. But enough of me yapping on, let's whip the TicWatch Pro 3 cellular / LTE out of its pretty little box, take you on a full-on tour of the hardware and the software, and compare it with the original TicWatch Pro 3. And for more of the latest greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! So first, let's have a quick gander at what you actually get in the box. You get the watch itself, you get a charging cable, USB. There's no actual plug adapter bundled in the box. You'll have to provide your own there, otherwise just bung it into an available USB port on your laptop or whatever. And it is, of course, a proprietary charger. And that basically just slaps onto the back end of the TicWatch Pro 3 LTE. And as you can see, it's a magnetic connection, so it holds there nice and firm. And you've got the usual documentation as well, and that's basically it. So let's actually check out this wrist rocket. Now, as you can see in the direct side-by-side comparison with the original TicWatch Pro 3, there's absolutely bugger all difference in terms of the actual design. You once again get lovely stainless steel bezels with the actual time markings on them, and then the rest of the casing is basically plastic. And the TicWatch Pro 3 LTE, just like the original TicWatch Pro 3, is once again only available in black as well, so no vibrant hues or anything to speak of. And yeah, it is still a fairly masculine design, quite chunky, especially on childlike wrists like my own, although not as bad as some of the smartwatches that you see. And if you keep on spinning it around, you'll see it's all plastic around the back as well, and then you get some silicone straps attached again, just like the original TicWatch Pro 3, exactly the same straps basically. And the good news is those are standard 22mm straps, so they've got little catches around the back so you can just prise them off and then stick on your own if you want something a bit different, maybe some nice sexy leather band action for a proper night out. But I found when I was reviewing the original watch that silicone strap is nice and comfortable to wear, even when you basically never take the watch off your wrist. Very, very handy. It's really good for exercise sessions as well, seems quite sweat resistant, and the actual watch itself is IP68, so again water and sweat resistant, so perfect for jogging in the rain, rocking down the gym, all that good stuff. Now to get the TicWatch Pro 3 LTE all set up, all you need to do is download the Wear OS app onto your smartphone, and then that will help the two to pair up. Only takes generally a minute or two. And the two will stay connected via Bluetooth when they're in range, but of course thanks to the LTE connectivity on this bad boy, if you're straight out of range of your smartphone, you'll still be able to receive messages and everything. It's all good. Now, just as the design of the TicWatch Pro 3 LTE is basically the same as the original TicWatch Pro 3, so are the rest of the specs and everything as well. You've once again got that dual display design, which is really, really helpful for saving battery life. So the majority of the time when you're rocking the TicWatch Pro 3 LTE, this will be the active display, the LCD screen. It's a very low powered display, so it saps very little battery life when it's actually in use. And as you can see, just displays the most basic information like the current time, date, steps count and battery life. And that can actually light up with a bit of backlighting as well, so say you're outdoors on a bright sunshiny day, you just want to check the time, just raise your wrist, and as you can see, you'll be able to clearly then see time, date, steps count without having to activate that OLED display, which does start sapping the battery life. And that 1.4-inch OLED display is an absolute stunner, nice and bright, nice and clear and sharp, and super colourful as well. Those more vibrant hues really shine through. And anyone who's used Wear OS will be right at home. It's basically the exact same menu setup as before, so just swipe right in order to access your Google Assistant and various bits of info. You can swipe left in order to access all of your various tiles, which can be set up via the Google Wear OS app. All you've got to do is hit tiles and then basically customize exactly what you want. You can swap around the order of them if you like, or you can get rid of some and replace them with others. Then if you want to access the watch settings, that's just a swipe down. I've noticed that sometimes the screen responsiveness can be a little bit off, sometimes takes a couple of swipes in order to actually do what you want, but that accesses the likes of do not disturb, the airplane mode, all that good stuff, and then you can dive into the full-on settings menu. So it's here that you can change the display settings like the brightness, the always on screen, you can turn on if you want to, but that will kin your battery life, screen timeout, all that good stuff, your actual notifications, gesture support, You can also customize that bottom button to set it to the app of your choice, basically. And then any notifications that you get on your smartphone or just via your eSIM, of course, will pop up on screen, and you can access a full list of them just by swiping up from that home screen. You can tap your way into one and check out the information. You can read most of the message from within there, and then you can choose to either delete or reply, whatever you fancy. Sadly, like with the original TicWatch Pro 3, the LTE version only has a small selection of smartwatch faces to choose between, just 3 in fact. And I've got to admit, none of them particularly stoked my sausage. But thankfully, once again, it's very easy to get a whole selection of bonus faces on the go. As you can see, just tap your way into here and you've got a whole load of Wear OS faces that you can choose between. And of course, you can dive into the online store to grab more. Now, you can actually take calls via the TicWatch Pro 3 LTE, either via your smartphone or of course via that eSIM, as long as it's not a data-only SIM, because it has a built-in speaker and mic. So, you know, as long as you don't mind looking like a bit of a plank token at your arm, then it's all good. That also comes in handy for the Google Assistant. You just give that a little tap and say, who would win in a fight between a shark and a polar bear?
According to Travel Manitoba, polar bears eke out a 4-2 win against sharks.
Yeah, go polar bears. And as well as being able to download all of the usual Wear OS apps from Google's online store, you've got a whole bunch of stuff pre-installed on here as well, including, of course, the standard Wear OS fitness trackers and everything. You've got a lot of Mobvoi stuff on here as well, although unfortunately a lot of it is basically duplicates of the Google stuff. So, for instance, you've got Tick Pulse, which is pretty much an exact duplicate of Fit Heart Rate. You've also got Tick Breathe, which again is very, very similar to Fit Breathe. So that is slightly annoying, but the main thing is you've got all of your basic smartwatch functionality on here. So for instance, the 24-hour heart rate tracking, Tick Exercise can just help to monitor your various activities. So for instance, walking, a bit of swimming, all that good stuff, but you get a lot more exercise types if you actually go to the Google Fit version. Good old Fit Workout. And in here, you've got a crazy selection of activities that you can choose from. Basically anything you could possibly even think of. Got a bit of flossing, what? That's a new one. Just floss for 12 hours a day. That'll probably burn off a good bit of energy. Kite surfing, martial arts, pretty much anything you could think of. You've got Tick Sleep, which is your basic sleep tracker. It's supposed to offer a bit of guidance and everything as well, but in my case, the original TicWatch Pro 3, all it said was make sure you get 8 hours a day and drink plenty of water or something. And then very fashionable at the moment is the old SpO2 monitor as well, just to tell you how much oxygen is pumping around in your blood. And again, it can do that whenever you like. And I'm 100% apparently. Excellent, must be breathing well. But as usual, of course, they point out that it's not a medical tool. It's only used for sort of guidance purposes, basically. A couple of the more slightly outlandish apps on here are Tick Hearing, which is supposed to analyze the sound in the environment and make sure that basically you're not going to be going deaf from too much crazy noise. However, I did find that this, with the TicWatch Pro 3 and now clearly with the LTE model as well, is that it ticks into that dangerous levels even when you so much as fart. Like, I'm literally just talking in a silent room and it's already in the dangerous 100 decibel level. And even when I'm not talking, it's still generally intense. So yeah, I'd take that one with a pinch of salt. And there's also voice memo as well, which allows you to just take basic little recordings right there on your wrist, just to remind you of, oh god, so many T's and C's. Just to remind you to pick up more vodka when you go to Lidl or whatever. And these then get auto-uploaded to your smartphone, and by default they are then automatically cleared from the watch itself, just to clear up some space. And the TicWatch Pro 3 LTE, like the original TicWatch Pro 3, also supports Google Pay as well. So you can just tap your wrist to a card reader, pay for whatever you want, and off you f***. Of course, the big hoo-ha around the original TicWatch Pro 3 when that first came out was it was the first wearable to rock Qualcomm's latest Snapdragon Wear 4100 chipset, which is supposed to be more powerful and more energy efficient. And you do get that very same chipset packed once again into this LTE model, and I found the performance on the whole with the original Pro was absolutely fine. Occasionally was still a little bit stuttery here in Wear OS, but I think that's a problem with the actual UI itself rather than that chipset. But on the whole, apps basically load up pretty much straight away. You're not hanging around waiting for stuff to happen. And here on the LTE model, just like the original TicWatch Pro 3, that is backed by a gig of RAM, which will certainly help proceedings, just keep everything ticking along nicely, so to speak. As for the battery life, well, the original TicWatch Pro 3 gave me 3 full days of use per charge. It's hard to see, obviously, how much of that is down to the energy efficiency of the 4100 and how much is down to that funky dual display design. Regardless, it's definitely an improvement over most Wear OS watches, which tend to need charging every single night, just like the Apple Watch as well. Unfortunately, it's nowhere near as good as the likes of the Huawei watches, which tend to go for at least a week or two between charges. Of course, I would fully expect the battery life to be a little bit weaker here on the TicWatch Pro 3 LTE LTE if you've got that eSIM all set up, especially if you're straying into an area where the mobile coverage maybe isn't so good, so it's constantly trying to search for the best network to join. However, it should happily last a weekend away, definitely, which is great news if you want to be not carrying around extra chargers with you and things like that. And it does have a built-in battery essential mode as well, where basically it'll cull most of the smart applications and it'll just leave you with the ability to check your time, check your steps count, all that good stuff if you do find yourself in dire need of a bit of juice. So that right there is a whirlwind tour of the TicWatch Pro 3 LTE, how it stacks up to the original TicWatch Pro 3. It's basically the same except with eSIM support. If you're still not sure, well, I've reviewed lots of the other big smartwatches that hit the UK in 2020, the likes of the Apple Watch, those Huawei watches, the Oppo Watch, all kinds of stuff. So definitely go check those out. And I've also rounded up my favourite smartwatches of 2020 in a separate video. I'll try to remember to stick a card thing here. I'll almost certainly forget though, so apologies. And for more than the latest greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers everyone, love you.